good and to achieve the objective 2030 SDG goals usually fall prey to that. So we do not only aim at solar installations that provide electricity or biogas installations that use organic waste in the communities to provide clean cooking fuel, so this may no longer use firewood for cooking. We also have this sustainable business model whereby we train these women on how to assemble simple quality solar reading lamps. We create markets for them to sell these lamps. Then they keep 70% of the revenue, we keep 30% of the revenue, so we don't get to depend on grants and funding, and then they become financially independent. For the biogas side of training, when you construct biodigesters, you have access to an agricultural byproduct, which they normally call slurry. Simple terms, you say organic fertilizer. We show these women how to collect this organic fertilizer, how to package it, and then we create channels for them to sell to those who are into organic farming, those who grow natural flowers in the urban cities. They tend to keep 70% of the revenue, then we keep 70% of the revenue, we keep 30% of the revenue. So in summary, that is what we've been doing for over 5 years. Yeah, 6 years, they're about now. 5 years, 6 years here at the Green Girls organization, and the impact has been amazing. We've been able to impact in Cameroon, Central Republic, DRC, Congo, and as we go along, you learn more. So that's what we do.
Thanks, Monique. And what's changed for you as a result of the pandemic? What's your experience been there?
Unfortunately, when the pandemic hit last year, we were phase 2 implementation in the northern region of Cameroon with the visa grant that we had received in 2019, because till date that was the highest amount we'd ever received in funding, $100,000. So we realized there was a real need for water, for clean potable water. We had always experienced not having access to water because we are really in the rural areas, not even semi-rural, we're really in the rural areas where accessibility is a problem. Like there's just nothing. Imagine you go to a village, it's dark, and when you're leaving, you can see spots of light because of our solar installations and all the like. So we realized there's a real need for water, for potable water, because a lot of emphasis on washing your hands, and all of that. Unfortunately, a lot of these communities don't have access to potable water. They depend on the streams and the rivers in the village areas. But now the challenge was, this problem we've identified, how can we sustainably make that part of what we can do to help? So with the team, we sat down and we saw that moving forward, maybe come 2023, thereabout, it's feasible as from 2023, we would start carrying out solar boreholes powered by panels, so that we don't offset the environmental and landscape of the villages. So we remain in the sustainability and eco-friendly space that we've been able to be a reference. Yeah.
Yes, so important. We were chatting earlier this week, Monique, and you were also covering how you've incorporated AI and digital into your business, and I'd love the audience to hear some more about that.
Okay, the reality is Africa, the continent as a whole, there are exceptional countries in the continent, but as a whole, we have an infrastructural problem at all levels. Bad roads, access to the basic amenities of life, it's a luxury, but technology is the multiplier. This same technology, we as a continent are really behind when it comes to this industrial revolution. That's just the reality. So the beauty about AI is very specific. There's no guesswork. It can be 100%, but you're really solving a problem at the root cause. So in the beginning, the challenge as far back as 2015, when I founded the organization, was how do I get a viable team to incorporate everything that was in my head? Because the thing with me is I'm not a tech person. I'm not a geek. I'm a sound legal practitioner. Yeah. But I found myself in this space. So I had all these ideas. So AI has made it possible for us not to fall into the trap of dictating solutions, because we have this amount of money that we've gotten from nations, we feel we know what the population or the vulnerable people need, because that's usually a problem. I'll take, for example, when I was a program manager, a very young program manager as far back as 2014, the projects I used to work on were about advocating for the girl-child education, against early girl-child marriage, against female genital mutilation, against breast ironing, you name it. So we will get grants at the time with my team to advocate for the girl-child education. But how can a girl study when she doesn't have access to electricity? But it doesn't mean the funds we had gotten to send them to school, build schools, have partnerships with the ministries of these nations, it did not mean that what we were doing was wrong. It was just a right solution that was not the exact solution, and that's a specific solution for them. And that's a lot of the problems that we have on the continent, because there is a mismatch between the problem that needs to be solved and the funds are coming in, what they should be used for.
Yeah, I love that smart use of technology to be able to make the most of the resources you have to get the best outcomes. Monique, I'm going to come back to you, but I just want to turn to Carleen for a moment and probably give your connection a break. I'm so glad, though, that you've been able to make it today. It's a wonderful story you have. Carleen, the LISC has done some really great work supporting digital transformation of small businesses in the US. And amongst that customer base, I'd love for the audience to hear about what you've seen as the big shifts as it relates to digital during the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to join this conversation today. I'm really excited to learn about what you're doing and hear about this amazing business. I think for what we've been seeing in the US, I think one of the biggest changes is the challenge it is for businesses to actually reach their customers. And when you're looking at especially Black-owned businesses in communities where the majority of our businesses are retail shops, it was virtually impossible to actually find and stay connected with your customer base. So the challenge of having to really almost like readjust and rethink how you connect with your customers and ultimately expand your customer base was huge. You saw a lot of people, trying to get on social media for the first time or trying to create an online presence for the first time, even though they've been operating as a business for many years and had kind of been building off of their already existent base. When that base wasn't there, everyone kind of went into crisis. So really being able to stay connected and expand your customer base was a huge thing. The other thing is the transition from cash-based businesses to being able to accept credit card payments or online payments was a huge transition that a lot of businesses, we're pretty hesitant to. Businesses stay as cash businesses for a variety of reasons, right? If you go into your local salon shops, barber shops, a lot of them still run on that cash-based model. But with COVID and the pandemic, it was virtually impossible to stay that way. So you did see a lot of businesses making that shift and really having to sit and think through what were the benefits of advancing in those technology spaces. And then I would think that, businesses had to also, there was so much time, people really had to sit and think about their business. And Monique, I'm sure when you're in the space, you don't have time to think about your business in that way. So many business owners, especially in the nonprofit space, because we tend to think about them as a different entity, but they're also businesses, right? You don't have time to think about operations and best practices. You're in the work. And a lot of times it's very hard to think about strategy when you're in that space. So I do think you're seeing a lot of businesses think a little bit more creatively about, are there ways to create different revenue sources? Are there ways for us to merge with other businesses? Are there new products that we should be selling? So I'm actually really excited to see what's going to be coming out as far as innovation, especially in our community, and how people are really adjusting to the needs that they currently see.
So some of these changes are likely to persist. How do you see the marketplace evolving and sort of give us a bit about your perspectives on the new entrants and
Yeah.
who are focusing on small businesses.
So I think that, you know, even the way that people shop is very different now. And I don't know about you all, like people are going online for items that they would never go online for before, right? You typically go to your local grocery store to pick up something simple, and people are really shifting the way that they're thinking about shopping. So that in turn also has to shift the way that small businesses run their business. More people are home now, so there's less people potentially going out to dinner and more people, going out to lunch or going out to buy lunch. So the way that businesses kind of have to adjust their pricing or maybe adjust the way that their the staffing times, the operational hours, all of that has to really adjust based on the state that we're in. I don't know what the childcare situation is outside of the US, but it's a huge contention for small businesses right now because kids have been home for a year and a half, right? So it's not as easy to run your business when you have 3 or 4 kids that are like virtually learning. People's tendency to purchase certain items have increased and decreased in certain areas. And I think small businesses are still trying to figure out how best to adjust in order to reach those new needs.
And Colleen, on sort of going digital, getting back to where you started, what's the challenge? What stops businesses? The pandemic has driven them based on need.
Yeah.
But your perspective out there, what's been the main challenge from stopping businesses from going digital? What are the big problems there?
I think a lot of small businesses really focus in on what they do and what they're good at, right? Like if you're a cook, you focus in on making the best type of food that you can make. If you are a seamstress, you're focused in on creating the best design. And it's really challenging for businesses or business owners, right, to think about the different components of running a strong and efficient business. So going digital is a lot more than creating a website. And I think as young millennials, we were almost like born in the technological era. So we're comfortable getting online. We're comfortable engaging with our customers through social media. But even the maintenance of that is really extremely overwhelming. It's not about just ensuring that your family and friends like your page. It's about communicating with your customers and ensuring that they know your products, they know what you're selling, they're able to like vouch for you. So really being able to move past the creation of having an online presence to actually utilizing it and engaging it in different ways. I think another thing is the overwhelming variety of what's out there in the marketplace right now is really difficult to sort through what product is best for you as a small business. I don't know about you guys, but like when I have too many options, you just get stuck in I don't know which to pick. I'm just not going to pick anything, right? So the ability to really assess like which products are best for you, which are best for your industry, for where you are as far as an early stage business, a more advanced business. There's too much information out there. And without the real kind of mentorship, the coaching that goes into helping you make really strong decisions, I think a lot of businesses kind of get stuck into the semantics of trying to be online and really thinking about digital practices, helping your business run more efficiently.
So it really takes a whole ecosystem to support small businesses through this transition. Organizations like yours, like Monique, that trains kind of women and girls to stand up on their own running energy businesses. Our partners who bring solutions to small businesses and help them select the right stuff. I want to kind of steer towards resilience and some of the mental health challenges for entrepreneurs, small businesses, in the face of adversity and COVID, the pandemic, the impacts I talked about at the start has taken a real toll. I'd love to hear your perspectives on how we address that in supporting entrepreneurs. And I'd love to hear from both of you, actually, as you've seen it over the last 18 months.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. Personally, last year I went in for therapy because for the first time ever, I was confronted with the fact that I just could not do anything. but I knew what I wanted to do, but I just could not do anything. And then in this part of the world, mental health is still a taboo. Like, it's not something they talk about. I mean, we're not used to going to, consult, see a psychologist and, talk to the person, and like, it's like, it's sort of demonized, like you're demon possessed, sort of. But I went in for therapy, and it did me so much good, because over the years, the African entrepreneurial ecosystem is very, very hostile, especially as a woman. You're being attacked at all levels. You don't have access to the platform. You don't have access to grants. It's either you're married or you're not married, or it's just something. You're bashed at all levels. That is the sad reality. So a lot of the times, like for a good number of years, I just threw myself into work, and the way I was formatted was like, okay, what's the next best solution? What's the next best solution? Because my team and myself have committed our lives to the problem we're trying to solve, which is lack of access to clean and affordable energy for women and girls. And at the surface, what people know about is the fact that these women don't have access to clean energy, but it goes way more than that. It's a woman who gets sexually assaulted because she had to go and fetch firewood for cooking. This is the sad reality. It's kids in the communities that are having third-degree burns because the child woke up and there was, the fireplace that was just dispersed so that the fire shouldn't go, and the child fell in the fireplace, and you find kids with third-degree burns. It's the girl who was sexually assaulted at 11, 13, and then she got pregnant in the act, and then she suffers fistula because she cannot bear a child, and then she is excommunicated when she's just defecating on herself and all of that. So these are the sad realities, and you don't know how much it affects your mental space until you sit, you're alone with your thoughts, and you can't do anything because of your surrounding circumstances. So I went in for therapy. I'm still for therapy, and I'm in a better place right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Monique, for sharing that with us. Colleen, just a quick word on that in our final minutes.
Yeah. So I think a couple things. Businesses, especially Black women, tend to link the success of their business with their own self-worth. And that in and of itself makes, succeeding in your business so emotionally draining and challenging. And the same taboo that you have in Cameroon is the same one that we have here, with people not being open, especially the Black community, around mental health and therapy and all of that. But I think one of the most important things is peer mentorship, connecting, and whether it's spiritual connections within your tribe, whatever it is, but making sure that you're talking to someone about the issues that you're going through.
Thank you so much for openly sharing that with us both. I think we're in our final minute now, and so just to sort of wrap us up, thanks for sharing your perspectives, Colleen, Monique, and to the audience that tuned in for this. I think the support for small businesses, and in particular Black-owned small businesses, is clearly a case to be sort of addressed. And we at Visa, working with our partners and organizations like Monique, Colleen's, are really invested in supporting the growth of these businesses through the coming period. So thanks for tuning in, and Monique, Colleen, I thank you again for participating.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Saha against Phelan. It's Saha, magnificent!
We are missing are missing from so many rooms, classrooms, boardrooms, everything in between. But we are here. We are programmers and coders, animators and analysts, engineers and entrepreneurs, designers, builders, creators, the bringers of change. We are here. We are here leading. We are here innovating. We are here working for our vision of better companies, communities, and countries. We are here. We have always been here. Our stories, our voices, our ideas have always mattered, more than mattered. And we won't stop asking more of the spaces that need to make space for more like us. All of us, all different types of us.
It's about making history. It's about innovating. It's about breaking barriers. It's not just about the past. It's about the future too. Celebrate Black History Month this October on Sky.
So we've heard a lot about how the venture capital community is becoming more inclusive and how ultimately people are doing a lot more to try and support Black founders. But we really want to get beyond this spiel. Ultimately, we want to hear from the founders in our community and more broadly about what their experience is in Europe and with some of the investors. And why? Because we will open source that and call people out when they're not doing it because we can. So ultimately help us understand who are the people who are really leading the way, providing good feedback, really writing checks and ultimately helping out the Black community, and those folks who are doing the performative, unhelpful things ultimately. So help us on that mission. Please fill in our survey. You can find the links all across the entire of the festival as well, and do make sure that you fill it out. It will take 2 minutes, but what we can really do is use this as a call to arms to push the industry to do more. Thank you.
Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to Black Tech Fest. I'm your host for this discussion, Judith Wandu, and I'm joined by the Black and beautiful Lynn May and Tiana Johnson. We're talking all things cancel culture today, so get your Ray-Bans ready because it's gonna get a little shady in here, okay? Tiana and Lynn, thank you so much for joining us. It's so wonderful to have you ladies here.
And thank you.
Yes, of course. Now, when BTF said we'd be doing a conversation on cancel culture, I thought this is the perfect time to have this discussion because a lot is going on right now with people being canceled, you know, Netflix specials coming under fire, and people in general growing on the idea of canceling interpersonal relationships when they feel like someone isn't acting right. So let's jump right into it. Question for you both, either one of you can go. Does cancel culture in general do more harm than good?
Lynn, do you want to start? Lynn May, do you want to start?
No problem. I think personally, now it's becoming far more damaging. I think that when there was a little bit more balance, and more cause, where I think it used to be useful when certain campaigns couldn't be backed by law. And when that couldn't occur, then society, so to speak, whether that be online or in certain social groups, could come together and say, do you know what this person has done was massively wrong. That made sense on a smaller scale. But now I feel like we've got to a place where there's jealousy involved, there's a lack of understanding, there's bullying, there's so many negative factors towards cancel culture. It's becoming detrimental, and it's actually hindering and affecting the age group of 10 to 22 the most. And there's been a rise in mental health issues relatable to cancel culture.
Wow, that's okay. We're going to get back to that. Not only the topics that you bring up, jealousy, but the mental health issues in that age group that's being affected. But Tiana, I want to hear from you too. Do you think?
For me personally, I think that it's quite difficult to talk about because I don't see cancel culture as something that's particularly like existential. I see it as something that's more like pseudo. So it's something like pseudo existential, that we think it is one way and it operates one way, but it doesn't really operate in that way. I think mostly that, like, when you strip it back to what it really is, what we consider to be cancel culture and what people are referring to as cancel culture is just a collective desire for people to see other people who are in like positions of power in particular to be held accountable for their actions. And there's nothing negative, there's no cons to that. I think like what Lin-Mei's referring to is like what it looks like now and how it can sometimes spiral out of control, and how it can create a safe space for people who don't necessarily have the most honorable intentions to, air out their own grievances and their personal grievances with individuals and people. But at the end of the day, if that person still has something that's on their record that is cancelable, then I don't see the issue with that.
Okay.
What is a cancelable offence, so to speak? Because you said something that is on their record that is cancelable.
I mean, R. Kelly, rape.
Yeah.
See, this is where it differs. That's a clear breach and breaking the law. That's a criminal act. So when we talk about someone who has committed a crime, that's different to me. I'm talking about something that doesn't fall into the remit of the law. What would you determine to be a cancelable offence which doesn't break the law at all?
I don't think it's about an individual feeling about what the thing is. That was like missing my point. That's a collective decision about what's right and wrong for the collective to make a decision about
who's the collective?
Whoever's engaging in the conversation.
It seems like the general public, some people would say Twitter.
Yeah, like whoever chooses to engage in the conversation is part of the collective, are they not?
Well, you mentioned what's a cancelable offense outside of. Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, what do you?
I don't think that the people on Twitter is a monolith, and I think people sometimes they see that a bandwagon is happening and they join the bandwagon because they enjoy seeing someone who initially possibly could have been doing well, like you said, is in a position of power. And to many people, it's enjoyable to see that person who seemed untouchable now quake in their boots. And I think the reason why it can be damaging is because I'm sure even yourself, you may have thought differently about 10 years ago. I hope you thought differently 10 years ago. I hope we all have, because that's what progression is when it comes to progressive mindset. How my opinions and what society deemed as acceptable 15 to 20 years ago is obviously not going to be now. So if I happen to say something which was completely, perfectly acceptable 15 to 20 years ago, and I may have lacked the knowledge and the understanding 15 to 20 years ago, now in hindsight, it's completely different. I may not have realized what was said. However, I may have sent a tweet. Why should I, who possibly could be a very positive person, going out there in the world, sharing what I'm doing, which is positive, and because something based on my own ignorance is being brought up, I may have now, as long as I say, I admit what I said back then was awful, but oftentimes when people come forward and they're shown what you said 20 years ago was ignorant and you apologize, then that same cancel culture bands together and say it's not good enough. And that's detrimental and negative, because it's not allowing people to see, maybe possibly 20 years ago, the error of my ways. I've now apologized, but the masses are not happy, because they won't be happy until I'm completely crumbled and mentally ruined.
Okay, so
from my perspective, more than anything, when people are not happy with an apology, it's more because they don't feel like the intention is not important. Your impact is as important as your intention. Therefore, if you said something in ignorance 20 years ago, irrespective of whether or not it was acceptable to say then, it still had an impact on somebody somewhere. And so people want to see the measurable, tangible changes that you've made to not just address the thing that you've done, but to correct the damage that you may have done. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that 20 years in the future or 50 years in the future.
Yeah,
okay.
I would vehemently disagree, but yes, over to you, Judith.
Hey, that's what discussion's all about. We could have disagreements. Let's dive into some case studies specifically on what both of you are touching on. So Lynn, it seems like you're leaning more towards the cons of cancel culture are when, you know, some people do agree that people enjoy canceling people in positions of power, that it could be coming from a place of either jealousy or enjoyment and wanting to just kind of tear them down for things that might not be as reasonable. But Tiana, I also see how people can agree with you on how you think that cancel culture is really, and I don't think either of you is saying that cancel culture is totally unimportant, but you're saying that cancel culture is a way to hold people accountable. And that's a lot of the reason why some people continue to get dragged, is because the harm that they've done, the impact that they've had, you know, doesn't really, it outweighs maybe an apology. Some people think, for example, DaBaby's apology for spreading anti-LGBTQ messaging on stage, and spreading stigmas about HIV, AIDS, and then his apology seemed a little snappy, you know, seemed a little not so sorry to some people. That's when people wanted to continue to drag him and see him get canceled from a lot of different tours and performances. But then when you look at someone like Doja Cat was a teen when she was showing feet in racial chat rooms. Yeah. And that was like over a decade ago or something like that. And it was an embarrassing moment that was never meant to be put out to the world. But a lot of people wanted to cancel her for that, because they're like, oh, she's, you know, this Black woman and she's trying to get white men to fetishize her, call her the N-word, this, that, and the third. And she apologized for what she said, even remarks about 4C hair. That impacted me in a way, because I have 4C hair. So when you get on stage and you say, I hate 4C hair, it's ugly. It's like, if you feel that way, you feel that way, but don't say that about my hair. And, you know, but I thought about it. I'm like, should she be canceled for what she did when she was so young and in an environment where everyone behaves differently to a response to being the only Black person in the area? It's predominantly white. And that was just her way of adapting. You know, she's biracial. She has a white mother and a Black father who wasn't in the picture as much. So it's just, you know, I think that I see both sides. Some people want to cancel and bring someone down for something that, you know, they did so long ago. And
I think a lot of people see cancellation as like an endpoint. So they see it as like something happened and then this person's cancelled and now there's been a dramatic change overnight based on this new information that the masses have received. But I know that's not true. I know that what cancellation looks like is an ongoing discussion where people add extra facts in between and are disruptive and challenge one another and challenge each other's experiences and each other's worldviews. And I know that that's what it looks like. It looks long term. And I know that like Lin-May mentioned before, that it's not always a matter of like what's legally criminal and what's societally, like socially criminal and okay. But if you do look at somebody like R. Kelly, I know that's an ongoing discussion that people were having for a long time. And even now, like there's still the discussion from older people in our community, oh, those little girls are too fast and those sorts of things. And that's what it is about, us as collective being able to decide what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I think that I can't see the harm in us collectively deciding what's acceptable, whether it's legally or morally, like socially or not, because those things do have to be a collective discussion. If they're not, that's why we end up with such skewed ideas and such skewed positions, such skewed morals that we clearly have today. If someone doesn't have the same, you know, thought patterns and same ideas about the world as me, then, you know, I'm willing to cut them off. And it's because that we don't collectively decide what is okay anymore. And I don't think that, the ongoing discussions that happen online when something does happen with someone significant, I don't think that the conversations that are then generated from that, those ongoing discussions, something negative.
Okay, now what you mentioned about R. Kelly, do you think there's a racial or gender component to cancellation? For example, R. Kelly was known to be doing what he's done with underage girls and boys for, I don't know, I want to say it's been known kind of on the low for about 2 decades. Yeah, and just a few years ago, Surviving R. Kelly came out and people started to cancel him more seriously, but also because he literally started facing criminal charges. Whereas some people would say, well, Chrisette Michele, a Black woman, performed at Trump's inauguration in 2016, and they just swiftly just let her go. A friend of mine really brought this to my attention because I'd never seen it that way before. I always thought cancellation had no color. Everybody can catch a grenade. And obviously we see that is technically true, but do you think that Black people or Black women specifically are impacted by cancel culture more, or do you think it's evenly distributed?
Well, this is the thing. If cancel culture is becoming more embedded in our society, I think we're going to head down a road of the majority, and this, I'm not saying this is either good or bad, but the majority of our culture, especially Black culture, here in the UK, in the Caribbean, in America, could easily be cancelled in its entirety. Let's be serious now. If we have a look at our culture, and I love my Caribbean culture, I was born in the Caribbean, and a lot of our music, whether that's, soca, more of the hardcore reggae, dancehall, bashment, a lot of the hip hop, if we're going to take on these social situations that cancel culture permeates in, then a lot of those genres really technically should be cancelled, because you're going to get people now that are going to now say, okay, misogyny is an awful thing. Okay, let's strip apart the hip hop world. The majority of our music has misogyny ingrained inside of those lyrics. So if the people that wanted to use cancel culture, I feel that our culture is going to feel the brunt of that more than anyone else's culture. Does that make sense?
I've got to disagree with that, because I think then what you're doing is conflating our cultures with things that are morally, unacceptable. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because in order for most of our culture to be then cancelled, no, because cancellation doesn't come out of nowhere. Nobody pulls cancellation out of their arse. Like, they pull it from somewhere. Some form of evidence is given, whether it's contextualized or not, and whether it has the context it needs or not. Some sort of evidence is always given for the issue. Now, do those music genres have issues? Yes, but I don't think it's wrong for us to call for misogyny to stop in hip hop. I'm a woman and I would love to enjoy hip hop without having to shut down the part of my brain that, has to process all the misogyny, homophobia, or whatever else in all the music that I listen to. And I don't think that us collectively calling for a change, a shift in culture is a bad thing. That doesn't seem like a negative thing for me. That seems like what change is.
This is the thing,
can still exist without misogyny.
This is where there's a thin line, because again, here in the UK, there's discussion around what is actual harassment and what that looks like. So again, when you look at Notting Hill Carnival, which is one of our biggest festivals, if not the biggest street festival here, and if you often see strangers such as a man who doesn't know a woman come behind a woman, hold her waist and dance with her. There's many women that enjoy that. There's many men that enjoy that. However, the way we're going in society now, that is soon going to be probably seen as harassment to many people. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong, because if a woman feels that that's harassment, that's up to her. However, if there's a person of notoriety in about 10 years' time, and pictures from Carnival come out that he, grabbed her, someone could cancel that person, which was perfectly normal and perfectly fine and ingrained in our culture with everyone enjoying it. But because now, fast forward 10 years, this is a cancelable offense, that took place 10 years ago, according to what you're saying, morally our society is wrong when we look at our culture, which I don't think it is. It's about preference. So that's why there becomes issues in terms of who do you cancel, because not everyone is offended. Not everyone thinks that certain things are bad. So that's where the issue comes.
Or depending on the era, like you mentioned, depending on the era.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that's really important to note is that culture is not just limited to, geographics and nation. It's also limited to time, like the culture of the time. And I think that if somebody is asked about those things in the future, then there's nothing wrong with contextualizing something with the time. But what we won't do is like pretend like there's not other ways to approach women that all women are not okay with, which is being asked a question, for example, is it okay to dance with you? This is something that everyone is okay with, and finding those things within society that as many people as possible are okay with, instead of something that's very hit or miss. I don't want to go into any situation with any person where there's a possibility that they might feel uncomfortable, when I know that there's another approach to it that isn't uncomfortable at all. And that's why those discussions, that's what I'm saying, like, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens as a discussion, as part of a community. And you won't get the sorts of ideas about what is the safest way to approach a woman for a dance unless it is a collective discussion, because everybody gets to put in their 2 pence and you get to make an evaluation, collectively, and decide that this is what our new standard is.
I see some common bridges between what you guys are saying, actually. And I think it's surprising because you guys have very, very sharply opposing opinions, it seems. But I think what you're saying, Lynn, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying, Lynn, is we shouldn't hold somebody to a standard where we're canceling them now, what they did now or in the past or whatever, if everybody is not necessarily offended by what they've done, because it's all about preference. And why do certain people have a right to entirely cancel someone because of what they feel that person did in the past or now? But you're saying, Tiana, this is a situation where if we want to make sure a man, for example, is approaching a woman and he doesn't know that woman, try to do the least offensive thing possible and not just go based off of what your culture is. I can grope and touch where I'm from, but you don't know how that woman is going to respond. So you're saying, are you saying that maybe people shouldn't be canceled, but it should just open up discussion? Because if that's the case, I see a bridge here. Maybe throwing someone away isn't the answer. Just having that discussion.
I'm saying that what we consider to be cancelling today is the discussion. I don't think that there is an endpoint where somebody is cancelled. I can't think of a single person. Honestly, I can't think of one person who's like.
Ellen DeGeneres. You gotta understand, people don't like it when people mistreat employees and things of that sort. So when people found out
as well, like about it being a literal crime, like she was actually abusing people on set, and there was years worth of people like saying, like, I don't feel like this is something that's on the line. That's something that's to be a discussion about whether it's okay or not, because it's obviously not.
But then this is
in any professional situation, because that's her job. In any professional situation, if you were harming your staff the way that she was harming hers, I would expect you to not have a job.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but the issue is there's a lack of context online. So let's say, for example, there's been some information that's come to light. The police have been informed, so on and so forth. Yet we don't know the facts. Mm-hmm. Automatically, because that person is in a position of power or notoriety, again, there is lots of people that are genuine with what you were saying, Tiana. It's a discussion that needs to be had. But then there are a lot of people who are just, yes, finally, like we've found a clinch in his armor, let's tear him down. And the issue with that is, you are jumping in when you do not know the context, you do not know the facts. And there's a lot of people, male and female, that are seeing that there is now opportunities to create stories or embellish a situation that happened. And they use that to their advantage, which is massively unhealthy. And the other thing is, we're also allowing a lot of positive characters in our community, especially in our Black community, and they're going underground because, as we know, based on how disenfranchised we were growing up, many of us, in certain areas had to do certain things that maybe were unsavory, and I'm not justifying that, but those people now have made really good positive figures for themselves. And they now do not want to come out and be that role model to many people because they are fearful that if they do, that one or two people from their past is going to come out and say these stories that's happened, not necessarily criminal, just maybe they said some things that we would determine to be unsavory or distasteful. So they're not coming out to share their amazing stories because they're fearful of being cancelled. And I think that's absolutely abhorrent and wrong. And even if there are things like that needs to happen, such as culture changes, we're actually stifling freedom of speech. And I'm talking about for all types of people that think certain ways, politically, socially, what have you. I want to hear those discussions. I don't want someone to feel that they can't say something because they're going to be cancelled.
Interesting. So the fear of being canceled might make people who are genuinely ignorant but want to learn feel afraid of coming out. That's actually very, very interesting. But again, both of you have fantastic points. I learned so much from you guys. In 10 seconds, can each of you just kind of wrap up what you think is a resolve for this? Because I see a common line. It's thin. Y'all have different opinions, but I see something. So let's start with you, Tiana.
I definitely think that cancel culture is a lot more complicated than we think it is. I don't think it's a new phenomenon. I think that it's just a phenomenon that now has social media added to the way that, that it works dynamically. And that's a new discussion about the ways that we use social media to hold people accountable. But at the end of the day, I'm not anti-accountability. I think that the people that are cancelled are people who are in media spotlight, but that is also a consequence that comes with being in the spotlight. We get a lot of opportunities for people who are very visible, and then there are also those risks, and it's a choice that we get to make. And I think that's really important to consider, and that, if people want to do the work, then they can just do the work. They don't necessarily have to shout about it. They can just do the work. That is an option.
Okay, thank you for that. And Lynn, 10 seconds. What do you think is the resolve here too?
I would say every single person on this planet has said something they regret previously. And when we come online, we need to be very careful of 1, how it affects somebody, 2, have you got context, and 3, do you know the facts of everything before you jump on the bandwagon? I want everyone to be able to say what they want so we can progressively learn. Sometimes people say things that I don't like and I'm uncomfortable with that, but I'm not going to resort to wanting them to be cancelled because I want to learn why they think like that. And I think moving forward, we should have these discussions. I do agree with Tiana with that. However, life is about a journey, and you will never be the same person as you was yesterday, 2 years ago, and 10 years ago. So I think we need to be very careful with who we cancel, because at the end of the day, none of us are God and none of us are the police, and we're not lawyers and judges. So who are we online to say whether someone should be cancelled?
Hey, I think we can all agree with Tiana and Lynn. Both of you guys made some really great points. You guys are both so freaking intelligent. I just want to say that. And I know we didn't get time to, get questions from the audience, but I think you guys' questions were probably answered anyway. So thank you today. Thank you to the Black Tech Fest viewers for watching. And of course, thank you, Lynn and Tiana, for joining. I hope you all left with something here today. I know I did. I was just educated by these two queens. And be sure to enter into, tune into the other discussions for the remainder of the day, because today is the last day of Black Tech Fest. So I'm Judith Wandu. Have a great weekend, y'all.
Saha against Phelan. It's Saha, magnificent!
We are missing from so many rooms, classrooms, boardrooms, everything in between. but we are here. We are programmers and coders, animators and analysts, engineers and entrepreneurs, designers, builders, creators, the bringers of change. We are here. We are here leading. We are here innovating. We are here working for our vision of better companies, communities, and countries. We are here. We have always been here. Our stories, our voices, our ideas have always mattered, more than mattered. And we won't stop asking more of the spaces that need to make space for more like us. All of us, all different types of us.
It's about making history. It's about innovating. It's about breaking barriers. It's not just about the past. It's about the future too. Celebrate Black History Month this October on Sky.
So we've heard a lot about how the venture capital community is becoming more inclusive and how ultimately people are doing a lot more to try and support Black founders. But we really want to get beyond this spiel. Ultimately, we want to hear from the founders in our community and more broadly about what their experience is in Europe and with some of the investors. And why? Because we will open source that and call people out when they're not doing it, because we can. So ultimately, help us understand who are the people who are really leading the way, providing good feedback, really writing checks and ultimately helping out the Black community, and those folks who are doing the performative, unhelpful things ultimately. So help us on that mission. Please fill in our survey. You can find the links all across the entire of the festival as well, and do make sure that you fill it out. It will take 2 minutes, but what we can really do is use this as a call to arms to push the industry to do more. Thank you.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Black Tech Fest. My name's Ashley Ainsley, and I am absolutely delighted, humbled, a bit starstruck to also be joined on this call by someone that I literally grew up watching. And for those who know me will know I'm an Arsenal fan, so it wasn't always happy memories, but I'm smiling today, and that's because I've got Louis Saha on the call with me to talk about some of his latest work. Without further ado, for those who might be a bit less familiar with Louis, he's an international football star, formerly obviously playing for teams such as Fulham. It's where I first remember him popping up on the scene from a British point of view, but also very famously Manchester United and the French national team as well, scoring many goals along the way. But that's only one of the bows to Louis' many strings, actually, or strings to the bow, that phrase, because since hanging up the boots, so to speak, he's actually gone off to become a very successful international businessman. And many of our audience actually might be less familiar with some of your work in this space, Louis. So I'm delighted to be able to talk to you a little bit about that. But I'm actually going to start off by asking you, for many people, they love football around the world, they see football, and then, the next season a footballer retires and that's it for a lot of folks. We don't see anything, we don't hear anything. So from your perspective, I suppose, what typically happens, and I suppose, how is your journey different to what typically happens given your work today?
Thank you for having me first. It's a real pleasure speaking to Arsenal fan. That's okay, don't worry. But yes, I think it was a typical journey where you realize that you're not invincible. You're not gonna be playing for the next 40 years. So I had to realize that I have to have a plan in some way, and basically, you have this mojo who start to disappear, that motivation that make all the sprint, all the hard runs, the hard training that you do natural, and now you starting to feel the pain, most of the time. So it was very important to get that kind of like say process of accepting that I was like going to retire. It was painful because I'm a competitor and I didn't have any more, let's say, opposition or enemies or defenders in front of me. So all this was really really difficult, but on the same time, straight away I had that kind of let's say adrenaline or different adrenaline by my passion about building something concrete for pro athletes. So I had this kind of transfer already in my mind that I was able to contribute differently maybe to others in so many ways, because yes, you can go into punditry or maybe manager roles, doing things in a way to educate or transfer your knowledge to young kids. I want to do something a bit deeper in a way to change the mentality, change the actual infrastructure, change the kind of ecosystem we have to live in when you are an athlete. So I really dedicated myself to that, even sacrifice, I can say. So I enjoy that. It's as I said, it's a passion. I am very passionate about it because I feel buzz when I see that it has a good effect on people confidence or people ability to make their own choices. So that's my drive, and but it wasn't easy. My journey was sometimes you can open doors, a lot of doors, because you have a name, so people respect that, but doesn't make you a valid entrepreneur for that. So those was a challenge to actually learn different skills, learn different ways of communicating or sales things, where I was not a salesman. I was someone I used to get things on the table or against or things get arranged for me. So it was a big change, but yes, very useful and necessary, because the bubble explode. When the bubble bursts, you have to realize as much as you can that you are capable, and that was not easy. And I think that's what is missing out there, is to help you be aware of that.
So just on that, for those who are less familiar, tell us about Axis Star, which is your venture, and what that is. Tell us, what it does and how it works.
So yes, Axis Stars was a way to replicate what I wrote on the book 10 years ago. So basically, it was like a guide, something that I can, let's say, give to younger talent in some way, to understand the ecosystem, to understand the pitfalls, and understand the benefits of this life in some way. And I done it in a very digital way. So in a way that now it provides pro athletes and entertainers as well the ability to connect with service providers has been verified. Why? It's because you don't have the time to actually do any due diligence. You have to have people around you to help you to take all those decisions, because you are, if you're lucky and attractive, you get a lot of offers, and sometimes bad ones. And the time to realize that you have the right people around you is sometimes 3, 4, 5 years. And when you have 10 years career, it's a bit messy. So we don't want gamble anymore. We want people with concrete indicators to pick the right people to work with, and basically doing the right choices in terms of connection, whether you can as well discuss and message with different type of athletes and mentors. So this network is really to mutualize in some way the knowledge, mutualize the actual opportunities that it's out there, and that's a very concrete tool where sometimes, as I said, you are under pressure